Hey everyone, it's Asiyah. Welcome back to Asiyah's Plant Life. Before we get into anything today, I just want to tell you guys thank you, that I appreciate you. You're sharing, you're liking, you're commenting, you're subscribing, you're really engaging, and that makes me so happy. And from the humblest part of my being, I want to say that I appreciate you. I know you have a choice in what content creators you watch here on YouTube, and I want to thank you guys for coming again and again and letting me know that you value the content that I'm sharing with you. So let's get started with today's video. Today, I'm not going to talk about plant care, nor am I going to do a tour of my plants. I just want to sit and have a talk with you guys. Before I move on, let me say that this may trigger some of you if you've experienced sexual assault, if you are battling or have battled with depression. This may be triggering for you. So I just want to put that out there so that you're prepared for what I'm going to talk about today. Now, in some of my earlier videos, I mentioned, pretty much in all of my earlier videos, I mentioned how plants were my therapy, how they helped me heal, and that they were an important part of my life to help me transition through that phase of life. And I received a lot of questions and comments about it here on YouTube and also on Instagram. And I'm finally in a place now emotionally and mentally where I can come and talk to you guys about this and answer those questions that you've asked me quite some time ago. So I will begin by saying I'm Caribbean, right? Born and raised in Queens, New York, born to a Panamanian mother. I am of Panamanian, Jamaican, and Bajan descent. So all Caribbean and tropical locations. So growing up with, in my home, there were always plants around. I can't even tell you how many, but there were always plants around. And as a child, I never paid much attention to the fact that my home was filled with plants. It just was. And as I transitioned into adulthood, I would always have at least one plant in my apartment, my house, wherever it was I was living. I would always have at least one plant. But it wasn't until, I would say, probably about 7 years ago where I really started to take plants or the therapeutic nature of plants seriously. And it started with just one plant here, another plant there, and then they've grown so significantly over the last maybe 4 years or so. So I'm a survivor of sexual assault. Now, I'm in my 40s now, but when I was 18, I was sexually assaulted by an older man. He was in his 50s, I believe, when I went on a job interview. And I carried that with me for years. Like I said, I'm in my 40s now. I carried it with me for years. And what I didn't realize was that the effects of that assault affected me in so many ways. I became angry and bitter and resentful, had a very difficult time dealing with men, particularly older Black males, because they triggered that emotion in me or that memory in me from my attacker. And it made it very difficult for me to have relationships, to have loving and positive relationships with my male children, even with my husband, who is now my ex-husband. So there was a huge part of my life that I went through in a fog of depression and despair and anger, and resentment and regret. And the anger wasn't pushed outward. It was internalized anger. I was angry with myself for putting myself in that situation, for not taking heed to the warnings that were there prior to me going into that situation where I was sexually assaulted. I was very fearful, very scared, and very adamant about protecting myself. So it was difficult for me to let people in. And it was probably about 6 years ago or so when I was at the height of my depression. Now, I'm a nurse by profession, although I do not work in the nursing field and have not worked in the nursing field for over a decade, but I am a nurse by profession. So I understand what depression is, right? And it's like for people who smoke, if you're a smoker, you know that smoking inherently is not good for us, right? And if we can tell other people that smoking is not good for them, but when we think about it for ourselves, we think that we're invincible and it doesn't affect us. So I know what depression is, but I didn't believe that I was depressed. And about 6 years ago or so, I started having these thoughts and feelings and emotions about harming myself. And it wouldn't be the type of thought that you think when somebody is suicidal. They think, I'm going to get a gun and I'm going to do this, or I'm going to get a knife and I'm going to do this. My thoughts were kind of along the lines of, wow, I wonder what would happen if that truck hit me as I was driving down the road. Or again, driving down the road, I'd see the shoulder or the ditch over on the side, and I would think to myself, I wonder if I would survive if I went off the side of the road. Or, if I was taking Motrin or something like that for an ache or a pain. Oh, if I took this whole bottle, will I just get sick because it's only Motrin? Or will I have to be hospitalized? Or what would happen? Those are the type of thoughts that I started having about 6 years ago. Now, 6 years ago, my daughter came into our life. Most of you may not know, I do not have any biological children. All of my children have come to me through adoption. And my reason for not having biological children is due to my sexual assault and the damage that was caused through that sexual assault. So my daughter was adopted 6 years ago, and she's my only girl. And it was at that time when I started having these very repetitive and invasive thoughts about self-harm. Now, as a nurse, you would think that I would say, hey, you know what, I need to talk to my doctor about this, or I need to speak to someone about it. But as a woman, and particularly as a Black woman of Caribbean descent, we are taught that we are supposed to be strong. We can handle anything that comes our way. We cannot show weakness because we are the matriarchs of our family. We're the matriarchs in our community, our friends, our family. They come to us and they draw from our strength. So how could I show weakness? How could I say, hey, I need to really go talk to someone because I'm having some pretty crazy thoughts? There was really no one that I could say that to, because I was the one that people would come to for advice and to draw on strength and to share their problems. So I just kept it to myself. And eventually, keeping those thoughts to myself really started to eat away at me. I began having chronic pain. I was grinding my teeth at night. I wasn't sleeping. I was eating everything in sight and gaining weight. There were a lot of things that were going on because of this anxiety that I had, and this anger and this desire to harm myself. So about 3 or so this went on for years. Remember, I was telling you I was sexually assaulted when I was 18. About 6 years ago, I was in my late 30s. And this went on with these invasive thoughts for probably about 3 years before I finally said, you know what? Let me go and talk to someone. And I did. I went and I spoke to someone. I found an amazing therapist on my first try. And I know that doesn't always happen, but I guess the universe was looking out for me. My higher power was looking out for me and knew that I needed someone that I could relate to and that I could get all of this stuff off of my chest and out of my heart. And I found this amazing therapist, and she helped me to realize that a lot of the things that I was going through and experiencing were due to the effects, going through and experiencing emotionally, I should say, were due to the effects of that sexual assault. Now, it was around the time, about 3 or so years ago, it was probably even 4 years now, that I started going to therapy, that I really took an interest in plants. Now, again, they were always a part of my life. They were always there. I started getting more plants, about 6-7 years ago or so, but no, not even that long, maybe about 4 years ago. So it probably was around the same time that I started therapy. But what I found was, when I watered my plants, when I looked at my plants, when I came home from a long day or just being aggravated with just life in general, the kids might have been acting up, my ex-husband and I might have had a disagreement, it might have just been a rough day at Walmart, because y'all all know that Walmart can be a pill at times, right? So when I would come into my home, I would feel so at peace when I saw these plants that I had incorporated into the landscape or the decor of my home. I couldn't really put my finger on why that was. I just knew that it made me feel good. And what I started to do along with yoga and meditation and therapy was taking time, carving time out of my day to care for my plants. And that was watering them, dusting the leaves, pruning them, turning them around so every side of the plant got adequate sunlight, moving them in my home if one wasn't thriving well in this area, putting it into another area. And that really helped me. During those moments, I felt at peace. It's like all of the negativity, all of the sadness and the hurt and the resentment and the regret just went away from me. I felt light and I felt amazing. I felt really good. And in doing that, I realized, well, maybe I need to do more of this and maybe I need new plants. And there was one period of time, which probably lasted about 6 to 8 months when we first moved into this home. And that was about 3.5 years ago. My older boys, who are now just shy of 18, would say, Ma, you come home with another? And my answer would be, yes, I'm home with another plant. It was during that time that I was really transitioning into self-care and realizing that my self-care didn't look like anybody else's. I needed yoga. I needed meditation. I needed quiet time. I needed to indulge in reading. I needed to attend my therapy weekly. I needed to touch my plants and breathe in the air around those plants and to see those plants on a daily basis. And I was bringing home plant after plant after plant, and my family didn't really understand, and I didn't really know how to tell them what was happening with me. I just knew that this was something that I needed for me as a mother, as a friend, as an employer. At one point in time, I always had to be strong and give of myself to other people. And this was really the first time, about 3.5 years ago, as I was stepping into my 40s, that I was really making time for myself and feeding myself with what my soul needed. And that's how my plant therapy came about. It was really a time for me to reconcile with my thoughts and my emotions and to be mindful. It was a time for mindfulness, for me to be mindful of what was going on around me and the words that I had spoken earlier in that day. I was able to reflect and be mindful of my intentions towards others, my intentions towards myself, and to realize what I wanted out of life and what I wanted for myself and who I wanted to be to the people who chose to be in my circle. Because, right, we choose to be in another circle. We don't get to choose who our family is, but we do get to choose if we continue to have a relationship with that family once we cross into adulthood. And we do get to choose who our friends and our associates are, right? So the people that chose to be around me, I needed to make sure that my intentions towards them were pure, they were honest, and they were forthcoming. And spending time with my plants allowed me to do that. Now, I didn't really have a particular regimen for how I cared for my plants at that time. I just knew that I needed to be in their space. And that's what I did. I would put some music on, usually some R&B or some jazz, some slow jazz, and just kind of just rock out to watering, spritzing, pruning, and just sharing space with these living beings who couldn't talk to me, but they definitely could let me know that what I was doing felt good to them and they liked it, right? And one thing that I also noticed was when I would fall back into my depression, when I would fall in or succumb to the negativity that was there, my plants would react. They would drop leaves. The leaves would turn brown. They would stop growing. They would wilt. And when it first started happening, I thought it was something that I was doing with the plant care. Am I not giving them enough water? Am I giving them too much water? Is the sunlight not right? And I realized over time that my plants were reacting to my emotions. How crazy is that? I don't know if that's something that you guys have experienced, but if you have, let me know. And if you haven't, be mindful of it. See how your plants react to your emotions. Just like children become familiar with their primary caregiver, so do plants. They know when their primary caregiver is not feeling well, when their emotions are off, when they're off balance. The plants will definitely react. So that also gave me another chance in witnessing my plants react to me. It gave me a chance or some insight into how my emotions affect others. So my plant care coupled with my therapy the times that I meditated and the yoga to just really relax and hone in and center myself really are what allowed me to experience healing. Now, will I say that I am completely healed from that experience? Absolutely not, because that experience broke me down to a point where I allowed other people and other experiences to treat me in ways that weren't kind and weren't beneficial to my growth, to my happiness, right? So I had that incident that happened as a teenager, and then there were other things compounded on top of that kind of just weighed down on me that I really didn't have time to process, that I'm still processing. So plants have allowed me to go through a healing journey. I haven't made it to the other side yet, but I'm a lot better now than I was 7 or 8 years ago, or 10 years ago, or even last year. I'm a lot better now than I was then. And having a forum such as this to talk to you guys about just plants and how much I love them and what they do for me has been another level or another way that I've been able to grow through this experience and to heal myself from all of these wounds that I've carried through my whole adult life to date. One of the other things that plants helped me with, and I'm going to share this and I'm going to go because I feel like this video is getting a little bit too long, but one other thing that plants helped me with is spirituality. Now, I grew up in a religious household. I don't know too many Caribbeans that do not have religion. So I grew up in a Christian household and I became Muslim as an adult. I've always found myself in a organized religion. Plants haven't caused me to take a step back from organized religion. Other experiences in my life have, but what plants have taught me is that the universe and nature, we have a need to connect with our spirituality, and just the beauty and the awe and the shock of plants. It's like, okay, this is not religion. This is spirit. This is a spiritual thing. This is nature. This is Mother Nature. This is the universe speaking to me through these beautiful plants that you see around me and the others in my home. So it was an awakening within me. Delving into plant care it awakened my desire to connect spiritually, which I hadn't had the opportunity to do as a Christian or as a Muslim. I followed the tenets of the religion, but there was always something missing. And what I've learned through caring for plants, through my plant therapy, is that if you have religion without spirituality, there's something definitely missing. Right? You have to have that spiritual connection. We have to be able to tap into the universe, into the earth, and into the beauty of what we've been given in this life. Plants have taught me that. So I'm going to stop rambling now. I hope that I've been able to answer some of the questions that you guys had about what I mean by plant therapy, how they've helped me through depression, and also giving you a little bit more insight into who I am. I know when you jump on YouTube, everybody always looks picture perfect. Their rooms are clean, or their filming areas are clean. They have on their best. Their faces are nice and washed and bright and ready for the day. And I know that is what you see when you come on YouTube. But a lot of times you don't know the person that's behind the camera. And while I can't share my whole life with you here today, I wanted to give you that part of who I am, who Asiyah is, how I came to be the woman that you see before you. And I hope that if you're experiencing depression, if you're a victim of sexual assault or domestic abuse, if you've gone through a bad marriage, if you having infertility, issues with infertility, if you've lost a child, if you've lost loved ones, that you don't allow those things to consume you, that you find something, whether it's plants, a person, a therapist, some other activity to help bring you out of that darkness. Sitting in that darkness and wallowing in that pity is a horrible place to be. And you don't want to be where I've been, where I wanted to harm myself. And I hope that none of you have to experience that. And if you are experiencing it, and if that is a part of your story, that you reach out and that you get some help and you find what works for you, because this world, this life is so beautiful and it's so full of joy. And when you're in that dark place, you don't always see it. And sometimes, unless you find a way out of that dark place, you may go through the rest of your life without ever seeing it. So thank you guys for allowing me to share on here. Again, I hope I've answered your questions and given you some insight into why I love plants so much and why I started this YouTube channel. And I hope to see you soon in my next video. I love you guys. Peace.